The Meridian station hung suspended in the void between three star systems, its crystalline spires catching the light of distant suns. This wasn't some sterile orbital platform. It was a living testament to galactic cooperation, grown from the same biometal that formed the backbone of Zephyrian architecture. Gardens of impossible plants from a dozen worlds created breathable atmospheres and transparent domes, while gravity fields adjusted seamlessly as beings of different physiologies moved through the corridors. Dr. Marcus Webb adjusted his simple gray suit and checked his worn leather satchel for the third time. At 38, he looked more like a small-town librarian than humanity's first galactic ambassador. His unremarkable brown hair was already thinning, and his wire-rimmed glasses kept sliding down his nose in the station's variable gravity. Around him, the other delegates commanded attention simply by existing. Zephyrians resembled walking cathedrals of living crystal, their 12-foot frames refracting light into rainbow patterns that danced across the walls. When they spoke, their voices created harmonics that made the air itself sing. General Vex of the Kraloth Dominion was a different kind of impressive. 8 feet of organic armor plating that had been battle-tested across 3 galactic wars. His species looked like someone had crossed a rhinoceros with a tank and given it tactical intelligence. Then there were the Voidborn, beings of pure consciousness that occasionally flickered into semi-physical form. When they chose to appear, they resembled elegant humanoids made of starlight and shadow, their forms shifting between dimensions. Ambassador Nethys had introduced herself by phasing through the station's hall, much to the security team's alarm. "Earth's representative has arrived," announced the station's AI, its voice carrying the musical quality of Zephyrian engineering. The massive assembly hall fell silent as Marcus walked to the central podium. The other delegates occupied platforms designed for their unique physiologies, crystalline perches for the Zephyrians, reinforced metals for the Kraloth, and floating energy fields for the Voidborn. Marcus stood at a simple lectern designed for humanoid species, looking impossibly small in the vast space. "Thank you for this opportunity," he began, his voice carrying the same measured tone he'd used to calm frightened animals for the past 15 years. "I'm Dr. Marcus Webb, and I study animal behavior." The reaction was immediate. The Zephyrians created a discordant chime that sounded like breaking, glossed their equivalent of laughter. General Vex's armored features twisted into what might have been amusement. Even the ethereal Voidborn seemed to pulse with what could only be described as condescension. "This is humanity's offering?" General Vex's voice boomed through the yawn. "Hall's acoustic systems. We invite them to join the galactic community, and they send us a pet trainer?" His massive form leaned forward, the metal of his platform groaning under his weight. What possible contribution could such a primitive species make to our alliance? Ambassador Nethys materialized more fully, her form crackling with interdimensional energy. "Perhaps they've mistaken this summit for a zoo," she said, her voice carrying the sound of stellar winds. "Should we ask him to perform tricks?" The Zephyrian delegate, whose name translated roughly to "harmony of distant suns," chimed in with what sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane. "Their physiology is so fragile. Look at him, he couldn't survive in half the environments we consider habitable. And his technology," the crystal being gestured dismissively, "they've barely achieved faster than light travel." Marcus waited patiently for the laughter to subside, his hands folded calmly behind his back. He'd experienced this before, the assumption that quiet meant weak, that small meant insignificant. He'd learned long ago that the most dangerous predators were often the ones that looked harmless. "You're absolutely right," he said finally, his voice cutting through the mockery with unexpected clarity. "We are primitive by your standards. Our ships are slow, our weapons are crude, and yes, I spend my days studying the behavior of creatures that most people consider inferior." He paused, his brown eyes meeting the alien gazes around him. But I've learned something in my work that might interest you. The most successful predators aren't always the biggest or the strongest. They're the ones that understand their environment and adapt to it. The hall fell silent again, but this time it felt different. There was something in Marcus's tone, not defiance, but confidence. The kind of calm assurance that came from years of walking into cages with creatures that could kill him without effort. Humanity offers something unique to this alliance, Marcus continued. We offer understanding, not just of technology or warfare, but of behavior, of needs and motivations, of the patterns that drive all living things, no matter how alien they might seem. He gestured to the assembled delegates. Each of your species has achieved remarkable things. But when was the last time you truly understood a mind that didn't think like yours? Before anyone could answer, the station's emergency klaxons began to wail. Asterisk. The alarms transformed the majestic assembly hall into a scene of controlled chaos. Emergency lights bathed the crystalline walls in pulsing red, while the station's AI announced in multiple languages, Code Black, unknown entity approaching. All delegates to secure positions. Through the massive viewports that lined the hall's outer wall, space itself seemed to bend. What had been empty void moments before now rippled like water, reality distorting around something vast and incomprehensible. Then it emerged, a creature that defied description, its form shifting between dimensions like a living nightmare. The devourer was roughly the size of a small moon, its surface a constantly shifting mass of dark energy and organic matter. Tendrils of pure void extended from its core, each one crackling with the power to tear apart molecular bonds. Where it moved, space itself seemed to recoil, stars dimming as if the creature's presence drained the light from the universe. Impossible. Breathed General Vex, his armored form suddenly seeming less intimidating. The devourers were theoretical, ancient legends. They can't be real. Ambassador Neffes flickered between dimensions, her form unstable with what appeared to be panic. The stories said they consumed entire star systems. Whole civilizations vanished wherever they appeared. Her voice carried harmonics of genuine fear. This one, it's already destroyed 17 inhabited worlds in the outer rim. The Zephyrian delegate's crystalline form resonated with discordant notes of terror. Our combined fleets engaged it at the Polaris cluster. 300 ships representing the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. The crystal beings. Light dimmed. 7 survived. 7. Through the viewport, they could see the emergency response already mobilizing. Sleek Zephyrian vessels that looked like crystalline arrows streaked past, their hulls gleaming with organic technology. Kralith battle cruisers massive, angular ships bristling with weapon systems, took defensive positions around the station. Even the Voidborn had manifested their rarely seen warships, vessels that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions. Simultaneously, the first wave of attacks began within minutes. The Zephyrians opened fire with weapons that converted matter directly into energy, creating beams of pure light that should have been able to cut through anything. The Kralith unleashed their infamous plasma cannons, weapons that could crack the crust of a planet. The Voidborn fired bolts of compressed space-time that could theoretically delete targets from existence. Every attack struck the Devourer directly. Every attack passed through it as if it were made of nothing more than shadow and memory. It's not even acknowledging us, General Vex reported, his tactical readouts streaming across the hall's displays. Our weapons are having no effect. It's as if we're firing at a ghost. But Marcus was studying the creature with different eyes. While the other delegates focused on its size and apparent invulnerability, he was watching its movements. The way it flowed through space wasn't random. There was a pattern to it, a rhythm that reminded him of something he'd seen before. It's not attacking, he said quietly. What? General Vex spun to face him, his massive form towering over the Small human. That thing has destroyed entire civilizations. Look at its movement pattern, Marcus insisted, pulling out a small tablet and quickly sketching the creature's path. It's not aggressive posturing. Those aren't threat displays. He highlighted the creature's trajectory, showing how it had curved around the station rather than moving directly toward it. This is exploratory behavior. It's searching for something. Ambassador Nethys flickered into full visibility, her form crackling with skepticism. Searching for what? More worlds to devour? Marcus was already moving, his small frame navigating through the chaos toward the hull's communication array. I need access to the long-range sensors, historical data on the other attacks, and I need to know everything about this creature's previous appearances. You want to study it? The Zephyrian delegate's harmonic voice rose to a shriek. While it's about to destroy us all? I want to understand it, Marcus corrected, his fingers already dancing across the alien interface. Years of working with different species had taught him to adapt quickly to new technologies. Every behavior has a root cause. Every action serves a purpose. If we can understand what it wants, maybe we can communicate with it. The assembled delegates stared at him as if he'd suggested having tea with a supernova. But Marcus was already lost in the data, his trained mind recognizing patterns that the others missed. The Devourer's previous appearances hadn't been random attacks. They followed a specific route through space, hitting certain types of star systems while avoiding others. It's not feeding, he murmured, his voice carrying the excitement of discovery. Look at the pattern. It's not consuming the stellar material or the planetary matter. It's searching through the debris. The energy signatures it's absorbing aren't from destruction, they're from scanning. Outside, the Devourer had begun to emit a low-frequency pulse that resonated through the station's hull. The sound was unlike anything in the known universe, deep, mournful, and somehow familiar. Marcus's eyes widened behind his glasses. Oh, he whispered. Oh, you poor thing. Part 3. The language of loneliness. The pulse that emanated from the Devourer wasn't random, it was a call. Marcus had heard similar sounds before. In the deep ocean research stations where he'd studied whale song. In the African savanna where elephants communicated across vast distances. In the dense forests where isolated primates called for their missing troops. It's not a weapon, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the panic in the assembly hall. It's a distress call. General Vex's armored form clanked as he moved closer to the viewport. Distress? That thing could tear apart our entire fleet without effort. What could it possibly be distressed about? Marcus was already pulling up spectral analysis of the creature's emissions on his tablet. The pattern was complex, but unmistakable, repeating sequence with variations that spoke of intelligence, of purpose, of desperate hope. It's calling for others of its kind. This isn't a predator hunting prey. It's a lost child looking for its family. The Zephyrian delegate's crystal form flickered with disbelief. The historical records showed dozens of civilizations consumed. By these creatures, entire species wiped out. Not consumed, Marcus corrected, his fingers flying across the data displays. Investigated. Look at the pattern of destruction. It's not random feeding. It's methodical searching. It approaches each civilization, scans their technology, their biology, their culture. When it doesn't find what it's looking for, it moves on. Ambassador Nethys materialized fully, her form crackling with skeptical energy. And the destroyed worlds? The billions of lives lost? Marcus's expression grew somber. Accidents. Collateral damage from a being that doesn't understand how fragile we are. Think about it. If you were looking for something and accidentally stepped on an anthill, would you even notice? The comparison sent a chill through the assembled delegates. They were the ants in this scenario, and the Devourer was simply two. vast to comprehend the damage it caused in its search. But what is it searching for? General Vex demanded. Marcus was already moving toward the communication array, his small frame dwarfed by the alien technology. Others like itself. Look at the star charts. Every system it's visited had similar stellar compositions, similar energy signatures. It's looking for the conditions that would support its own species. The station shuddered as the Devourer's pulse intensified. Through the viewport, they could see tendrils of dark energy extending from the creature's core, gently probing the station's hull. The touch was careful, almost delicate, like a blind person feeling their way through an unfamiliar room. "It's scanning us," Marcus said, his voice filled with wonder rather than fear. "It's trying to understand what we are. And when it realizes we're not what it's looking for?" Ambassador Nethes asked, her form flickering with anxiety. "Then it moves on," Marcus replied, his hands working frantically at the communication controls. "And the gravitational disturbance from its departure tears the station apart. We have maybe 20 minutes before it gives up and leaves." The other delegates exchanged glances filled with desperate hope. If the creature would simply leave, they could count themselves lucky to have survived an encounter with the galaxy's most feared predator. But Marcus was thinking of something else entirely. "Unless we give it what it needs." "What do you mean?" General Vex's voice carried the weight of command and desperation. Marcus had accessed the station's most powerful communication array, the one designed for long-range diplomatic contacts. His fingers danced across controls that had been designed for beings with entirely different physiologies, but his years of working with alien technology served him well. "It's been alone for millennia," he said, his voice soft with empathy. "Searching for others of its kind across the galaxy. Imagine that level of isolation. Imagine being the last of your species, wandering through space, hoping against hope that somewhere, somehow, you might find another like yourself." He began inputting commands, using the station's powerful sensors to analyze the Devourer's communication. Patterns. The creature's pulse was complex, not just a simple repeating call, but a sophisticated attempt at communication that contained mathematical sequences, star charts, and something that could only be described as emotional resonance. "What are you doing?" the Zephyrian delegate asked, its harmonic voice filled with concern. "I'm going to talk to it," Marcus replied, his voice carrying the same calm certainty he'd used when approaching wounded animals. "I'm going to let it know that it's not alone." The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as the small human began to construct a response. He used mathematical principles that were universal across species, energy patterns that would be recognizable to any intelligence, and underneath it all, something that none of the other delegates could have provided genuine compassion for. A creature in pain. The first response pulse went out from the station's communication array, carrying Marcus's carefully crafted message into the void. The Devourer's reaction was immediate and dramatic. The creature's massive form shuddered, its tendrils retracting as if in surprise. The mournful call that had been echoing through space cut off abruptly, replaced by something that sounded almost like ... hope. "It's working," Marcus whispered. "It's actually working." But the real test was yet to come. The silence that followed Marcus's first communication pulse was deafening. The Devourer hung motionless in space, its massive form no longer rippling with the restless energy of endless searching. For a moment that stretched into eternity, the assembled delegates held their breath, waiting to see if the galaxy's most feared predator would respond to a message of compassion from a species it could destroy without effort. Then it answered. The response came not as a pulse of energy, but as a complex pattern of gravitational waves that made the station's hull sing like a tuning fork. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, a melody that seemed to contain eons of loneliness and desperate hope. Marcus's tablet lit up with readings as the station's sensors translated the communication into comprehensible data. It's telling me about itself, Marcus said, his voice filled with wonder. He looked up at the assembled delegates, his eyes bright with tears behind his wire-rimmed glasses. It's showing me star charts, systems it's visited, worlds it's searched, and everywhere it's been alone. The Zephyrian delegate's crystal form resonated with sympathetic harmonics. You're actually communicating with it? More than that, Marcus replied, his fingers flying across the communication controls. It's learning. Watch. He sent another pulse, this one containing basic information about the station, its purpose, the species gathered there, the concept of cooperation between different forms of life. The Devourer's response was immediate and complex. The creature began to project images directly into space holographic displays of stellar phenomena that told a story older than most civilizations. The assembled delegates watched in awe as the history of the Devourers unfolded before them. They weren't always alone, Marcus interpreted, his voice soft with understanding. They were a species like any other. They lived in the spaces between stars, feeding on cosmic radiation and dark matter. They were explorers, scientists, artists of a kind we can't even imagine. The images showed the Devourers at their height dozens, of the massive beings moving through space in graceful formations, their forms creating patterns of beauty that spanned light years. They had been gardeners of the cosmos, tending to stellar nurseries and guiding the formation of new worlds. What happened to them? Ambassador Nethys asked, her form flickering with empathy. The images shifted, showing a catastrophe beyond imagination. A cascade failure in the fabric of space-time itself, triggered by an experiment that had gone horribly wrong. The Devourers had been trying to create a bridge between dimensions, to expand their exploration beyond the physical universe. Instead, they had torn a hole in reality that consumed their entire civilization. This one survived, Marcus said, his voice heavy with the weight of cosmic tragedy. It was away from the homeworld when it happened. It's been searching ever since, hoping to find others who might have escaped. The Devourer's form began to change, its chaotic surface organizing into patterns that suggested intelligence, personality, even a kind of desperate hope. It was no longer a mindless predator. It was a person, alien beyond imagination, but unmistakably sentient. Billions of years, General Dex said, his armored form somehow managing to convey sympathy. Alone for billions of years, searching for family that no longer exists. Marcus was already working on his next message, this one more complex than any he'd attempted before. He was trying to convey concepts that had no equivalent in the creature's experience. The idea of chosen family, of bonds that transcended, species, of communities built on understanding rather than blood. The response came as a wave of emotion so powerful it made the station's empathic sensors overload. The Devourer was experiencing something it hadn't felt in eons' hope. Not the desperate hope of finding its own kind, but the possibility of connection with beings entirely unlike itself. It wants to understand us, Marcus said, his voice filled with excitement. It's asking about our civilizations, our cultures, our way of life. It's curious about how different species can work together. The other delegates found themselves drawn into the conversation, despite their fears. The Zephyrian delegate began sharing harmonic patterns that represented their people's philosophy of universal harmony. General Dex transmitted tactical data. That, stripped of its military context, showed the Krellith dedication to protecting the innocent. Ambassador Nethys shared glimpses of the Voidborn's transcendent understanding of reality's deeper structures. The Devourer absorbed it all, its massive intelligence processing concepts that were entirely foreign to its experience. And then, slowly, it began to change again. The chaotic energy that had made it seem so terrifying began to organize itself into patterns that were almost peaceful. It's learning, Marcus breathed. It's actually learning how to be part of something larger than itself. But the real test was yet to come. The Devourer had spent billions of years as a solitary being, its every action causing unintended destruction. Could it learn to exist among fragile civilizations without destroying them? Could it find a place in a galaxy filled with beings that were, by comparison, as fragile as soap bubbles? Marcus was about to find out. Because the Devourer was asking for something unprecedented, it wanted to come closer. It wanted to meet them face to face. The request hung in the vacuum of space, like a challenge to everything the galaxy thought it knew about survival. The Devourer, a being that had accidentally destroyed entire civilizations, was asking for permission to approach the station directly. The assembled delegates stood in stunned silence, their minds struggling to process the implications. Absolutely not, General Vex said, his armored form clanking as he moved closer to the viewport. One wrong move and it tears the station apart. We can't risk the lives of everyone aboard. Ambassador Nethys flickered between dimensions, her form crackling with anxiety. The gravitational disturbance alone could kill thousands, and if it loses control, ... But Marcus was studying the creature's latest transmission, his tablet displaying complex equations that described precise gravitational manipulation. It's not just asking, he said quietly. It's showing us how it can approach safely. Look at these calculations. It's learned to modulate its gravitational field, to compress its energy signature. It's trying to make itself ... smaller. The Zephyrian delegate's crystal form chimed with disbelief. Smaller? It's the size of a moon. Not physically, Marcus corrected, his voice filled with wonder. But it's learning to contain its effect on local spacetime. It's been practicing while we've been talking. Watch the gravitational readings. The station's sensors confirmed what Marcus had observed. The Devourer's gravitational signature was indeed changing, becoming more focused, more controlled. Creature was essentially learning to walk softly in a universe filled with fragile things. It's trying to be gentle, Marcus said, his voice soft with emotion. A being that size, that powerful, and it's learning to be careful. Do you understand what that means? The other delegates exchanged glances filled with uncertainty and hope. They were witnessing something unprecedented, a cosmic predator learning to coexist with prey that it could destroy without effort. I'm going to meet it, Marcus announced, already moving toward the station's shuttle bay. You're what? General. Vex's voice boomed through the hall. That's suicide. It's communication, Marcus corrected, his small frame somehow radiating confidence. It's been alone for billions of years. It needs to know that it's not alone anymore. And sometimes that requires a leap of faith. Ambassador Nethys materialized directly in front of him, her form crackling with protective energy. Marcus, you're talking about approaching a being that could unmake you with a thought, even if it doesn't mean to harm you. The radiation alone, ... It's already solved that problem, Marcus replied, showing them the latest transmission. Look at these energy patterns. It's creating a protective field, a space where smaller beings can exist safely in its presence. It's been working on this for the past hour. The Devourer's latest message was indeed a marvel of cosmic engineering. The creature had devised a way to create a pocket of stable space-time around itself, a protective bubble that could shield fragile life forms from its overwhelming presence. It wants to meet us properly, Marcus said, his voice filled with the excitement of discovery. Not as a predator studying prey, but as one person meeting another. The shuttle bay was designed for diplomatic missions, equipped with translation, matrices and environmental controls that could accommodate dozens of different species. Marcus stood before the small craft that would carry him into the void, his simple gray suit replaced by an environmental suit that somehow made him look even smaller. "Are you certain about this?" the Zephyrian delegate asked, its harmonic voice carrying genuine concern. "If you're wrong about its intentions, ... "I'm not wrong," Marcus replied, his voice carrying the calm certainty of someone who had spent years reading the language of behavior. "I've been studying predators my entire life. This isn't predatory behavior. This is ... curiosity, wonder, the desire to understand and be understood." The shuttle launched into space, its small form dwarfed by the massive creature that waited in the void. As it approached, the Devourer began to change again, its chaotic surface organizing into patterns that suggested greeting, welcome, careful, restraint. The meeting took place in a bubble of twisted space-time, a pocket of reality that the Devourer had crafted specifically for this moment. Marcus stepped out of his shuttle onto a platform of solid energy, his small form protected by forces that defied comprehension. The Devourer manifested an avatar, a smaller projection of itself that was still massive by human standards, but somehow managed to convey gentleness. It was like watching a mountain learn to whisper. The communication that followed wasn't words, it was pure understanding, a sharing of consciousness that transcended language. Marcus experienced the Devourer's eons of loneliness, its desperate search for meaning in an empty universe. And the Devourer experienced Marcus's compassion, his ability to see beyond fear to the person beneath. When Marcus returned to the station, he brought with him something unprecedented, a treaty. Not a peace agreement between species, but a partnership between the galaxy's smallest representative and its largest inhabitant. The Devourer would become the galaxy's protector, using its vast power to shield civilizations from cosmic threats. In return, the galaxy would provide what it had always needed: companionship, understanding, and the knowledge that it was no longer alone. Marcus became the first universal translator, not of languages, but of the fundamental needs that connected all living beings. He established communication protocols that would allow any species to reach out to others, to find connection across the vast distances of space and consciousness. The other delegates watched in amazement as the galaxy's most feared predator gently positioned itself near the station, its massive form creating a protective shield around the diplomatic facility. It was no longer a threat, it was a guardian, a being that had learned to use its power not to dominate, but to protect. In the end, the galaxy learned something important from a small human and a lonely giant. True strength wasn't about size or power, it was about the courage to reach out, to trust, and to find common ground, even with the most unlikely allies. The Devourer had found its family at last, and the galaxy had found its heart. The end in the years that followed, the story of Marcus Webb and the Devourer became legend throughout the galaxy. Children of dozens of species learned about the tiny human who taught the universe's greatest predator to be gentle. Asterisk.